And welcome to my library. Yes, one of my favorite hobbies is to Google search fun museum libraries and then put them as my Zoom background. So every night I get to be in a different beautiful library. So great to see everybody. You guys can hear me okay? Great. Let's see, everyone go ahead and just say hi in the chat. I like to communicate a lot with the chat as we go. That'll help me to see where you guys are all at. And any questions, just throw them in there. If I don't see it as things are going through, we'll have a little bit of time at the end as well. So I am going to get my screen share going as well. I think I can do that. Okay, you guys can see. Okay, I have to go back to the beginning here. There we go. You guys see my title slide now? Great, awesome. Okay, well, thanks for letting me speak tonight. Every time I present this, it gives me the opportunity to sharpen up a little bit and to add some new perspectives. So those of you who've been with me a while are going to see some things that you've seen before, but everyone's going to see something new. And for those of you who are brand new, I'm not going to assume you know anything about aroma freedom. That being said, I'm not going to teach you everything you need to know right now. So feel free to, I'll give you some resources later, how you can hop on the website, learn more, and get up to speed with whatever level of learning you want to have with this. But I'm super excited about the topic tonight, aroma freedom and the new science of memory reconsolidation. And that's a $5 word. And what this is, what we're going to talk about today is really a new understanding of how aroma freedom can be so powerful and how our essential oils can be so powerful. And those of you, we're all on because we love the oils. We love Gary's mission. We love what we can do with them. And you're going to learn some new things to do with the oils that can literally change someone's life permanently, not just while they're smelling the oil. And that's really the question that's driving us today is, how can you have an oil experience that is so profound that a person's life is truly different after having that experience? And I know that's an experience a lot of us have had with the oils, and that's something that we would love everyone to have with the oils. And I'm going to actually show you the neuroscience behind how we can do that using the specific protocols that I developed. So aroma freedom, for those of you who don't know, a technique I created back in 2016. I wrote a book on it, and it kind of took off in the young living world because it was a step-by-step process that everyone could do. They could use it on themselves, their family, their friends, their team. And what I love about it is that it's not just something that you have to go and get done on you, but it's something that you can do yourself. You can bless other people in your life with it as well. So what we're really doing is dissolving and recreating new meaning structures in our lives using the sense of smell. And thousands of people all over the world do it, hundreds of certified practitioners. We have a certification training program for those of you who want to do it professionally. I'll tell you more about that later. But you can use it daily to master stress and motivation. I'm going to briefly go over with you, and if we have time, I'm going to show you guys a quick tool you can use every day, whenever you need to transform stress into an actual transformation in your life. We can also use it to break free from traumatic memories. So these are those memories, could be a big T trauma, like being assaulted or going through a war or a terrible accident or something, or it could be the little T traumas, you know, those hurts and disappointments and things that nobody likes, but often stick with us for many years, that we can clear through those quite quickly with aroma freedom. And also we use it to identify and release memories and thoughts that don't serve you in relation to a goal. And in the classic AFT process that's described in the book, we start by setting a goal, and we identify and clear out all those negative thoughts and feelings and memories that get triggered when you set that goal. So what happens during an AFT session, and again, I'm not going to go through all 12 steps right now. You can research it more whenever you like, but I'm going to give you the basic gist of what happens in an aroma freedom AFT session. We start with a goal, and then we're listening in for, well, what does that negative thought say that tells you this can't happen? And how do you feel when you hear that thought? And where do you feel it in your body? And then you drift back to an earlier time when you felt the same way, and you end up back at a memory. Happens all the time. I mean, every once in a while, there's not a specific memory, but almost every time you find yourself back at a memory that you never would have thought would be related to this issue at hand. But you're back at that memory of whenever that was, when you got, turned down for the, senior prom, or when you failed that test in high school, or whatever it is. And when we set up the memory properly, we breathe the essential oils in. The classic oils that were around in 2016 I was using was frankincense, lavender, and stress away. To make a note of those. We used those because they were in the starter kit. Everybody had them. Trauma Life Oil was what I had used previously, but that was out of stock at that time. So we found that this mixture, frankincense, lavender, stress away, works really well. Trauma Life is back in stock, so that's still a go-to. Other great oils, Inner Child, Release, Sarah, so many good ones. Most any oil that is calming to you when you smell it will work for this, but those are the specific ones that we know work really, really well. So what happens as you're breathing the oils into this memory is the memory itself sometimes visually dissolves or gets further away, or you just get a different perspective on it, or it shifts and something happens that didn't happen in it before. The things can happen. And in that process, what else happens? Your body relaxes, the feelings release, the negative thoughts disappear, and then you start feeling more hopeful and confident about your goal. And this is what happens with each round of Aroma Freedom session. In a full AFT session, you might do 2 or 3 or 4 rounds of this until when you think of that goal, there's just no more negative thoughts. You don't have any doubts in your mind that it could happen. And if you don't know how it's going to happen, you'll have some ideas about maybe I need to go learn some skills. Maybe I need to get a coach. Maybe I need to join a mastermind. Maybe I need to go back and study the desk reference. You might get some ideas of where to go if you don't know where to go. So the big question we need to answer is, well, why does this happen? And when I first created the technique, I had some basic ideas about why it happened, but it was about a year after writing the book that a chiropractor called me and says, oh, what you're doing is called memory reconsolidation. And I said, what's that? He said, oh, well, that is a process that neuroscientists have been studying since about 2004. And they've discovered that there's a specific neural process that occurs when old memories are brought up and they're recycled. So we're going to get into how that actually happens. And you're going to learn to understand what this new science is all about and what's so exciting about this science. Just a little more about what we see in Aroma Freedom, just so that we know what it is that we're studying. When the certification students, I had the first year of taking people through the process, I had everybody recording all of the sessions they were doing into a database. And after a year, the database spit out some really interesting data. So after a year, we had 3,400 client sessions. People had gone through this process. And when they said their goal, they would rate how possible the goal felt. And in the beginning, they were maybe a 3, 4, or 5 out of 10. So 0, totally hopeless. 10 is totally confident. So they were in the 3, 4, 5 range. After just one round of an AFT session, all of a sudden, they're at a 5, 6, or 7. After 2 rounds, 7, 8, or 9. After 3 rounds, most people, the vast majority of people, are at 8 or higher. And these are people that in the beginning were pretty unsure that it could happen. Now, 3 rounds later, they're pretty sure it could happen. Well, what the heck is happening? And this is over 3,400 sessions. So it's not just like 1 or 2 sessions where this happened. Session after session after session that's happened. That showed us that we were really onto something. So a couple quick testimonials, and we'll talk about why these are important. Ann Hummeldorf, one of our practitioners, was describing, I just grabbed these from the Facebook group a little bit ago. She says, I can now do Facebook Lives and online webinars. Before I was completely uncomfortable and tongue-tied. Thank you. So in all of these testimonials, what I want you to see is that there's a change that's occurring, and this change has occurred, and they don't need to try anymore. She doesn't need to every day psych herself up to do the Facebook Live. It just, there's an absence of a fear that was there. And the absence, that's the important thing. Something has shifted in whatever it is that was feeding the fear. It's just not there anymore. Kayla said, I pulled my hair as a calming thing with my anxiety. After a while, it became a habit. After AFT, I don't pull my hair. I don't tend to get as worked up or overwhelmed in difficult situations either. I've also been a nail biter my whole life. One AFT session and I have long nails. I even made it through the Super Bowl with my nails, being a Chiefs fan. This was a couple of years ago when they were in the Super Bowl. And again, you see in there, she's not saying I have to struggle and fight and bathe in oils every day to achieve this. She did something, and that something she did led to this permanent effect. Chris Riccardi said, self-love, I'm beautiful, I'm strong, I am worthy. Thank you for helping make my life more beautiful. This is just had to do not so much with a goal that she was trying to reach, but just how she felt about herself. And Amanda says, I used to feel crushed and paralyzed by some certain circumstances. Now I'm able to move forward. AFT has also allowed me to put healthy boundaries in place. It has truly been life-changing for me. So this is an example where something has shifted in her personality and her ability to create and sustain relationships with people. Susan was asking, how often can you do a full session? You could do one every day. Generally, I mean, once a week is common. When you first start doing it, you might even do it more than that. There's some caveats, there are sometimes if you're getting into some really deep trauma that you're releasing, you might feel fatigued for a couple of days afterwards. We call that emotional detox. So you really have to listen to your body, listen to your emotions, but there's no side effects from it. So as long as you're feeling good and have the time and the energy, when I first created this process, even though I had already been doing personal growth for 25 years, I was discovering a ton of stuff to clear on myself. I was doing sessions on myself daily. Someone's asking, can I help people quit smoking? Yeah, we have a wonderful technique called the cravings technique. I have a video on that. You can get that in the training vault, and it'll show you how to release any craving very quickly. Another quick little study we did. I asked my certification students just to do a little self-study. I gave them what's called a Beck Depression Inventory, which measures 21 symptoms of depression. And I said to them, now go back and remember what you were like before you ever discovered AFT, and fill out the questionnaire, and then fill it out again based on what your life is like right now. And sure enough, they were surprised. A lot of them were surprised that they actually fit the criteria for mild, moderate, or major depression, which a lot of people are walking around with symptoms of depression, even if you're not sad all the time, if you're procrastinating, if you're not reaching your potential, if you're being held back by things, a lot of you may have symptoms of depression that is going untreated. So, but these people, the red is how people were before, and then the blue is after. And just so you know, the cutoff point is about 10. Anything below 10 is just considered everyday life. So majority of them were quite a bit higher than 10 before, and afterwards, almost all of them were down. This is after using AFT in their life for quite a while. And this was also, I just broke it down by question. There's 21, I'm not going to go into them all right now, but there are 21 categories of depression that this asks about: sadness, pessimism, past failure, loss of pleasure, guilty feelings, punishment feelings, self-dislike, self-criticalness, worthlessness. Interestingly, that spiked higher than anything. And this is the whole entire group of certification students that were in this study. I think there were 16 in there. And as a group from before, and then with the red, and then the blue is after. And you can see, again, across the board, people are just feeling and doing so much better after this. So we know it works. We know it works really well. We know it works quickly. So it still leaves the question of, well, how does it work? So that's what we're going to get into. When I first created Aroma Freedom, we had the one main technique. What you refer to as AFT, because I call it AFT in the book, is really just one of 6 techniques, as we've been teaching the certification now for 6 years. And through that time, I've kind of developed and mapped out actually 6 full different processes we can use for this. So AFT is actually right here. So if you think of the past, present, and future, Aroma Freedom, AFT, is when you're feeling stuck or frustrated. You can if you don't know why you're stuck, you say, I want to be a silver. I can't seem to get there. What's wrong? I don't know what's wrong. You do an AFT session, and that helps you identify what's wrong and helps you get clear. On the other hand, if you have a past memory that you're feeling, every time you think of it, you feel haunted, you feel anxious, you feel nervous, then you're down here, you start with called TMRT, the memory resolution technique. So that's all the way in the past. We have one that's right in the present. It's called the Aroma reset. That's a quick little technique. I just did a 7-day reset challenge that people really love. And this is just a simple 1-minute technique where you're just doing a quick check-in on a situation in your life where you're feeling overwhelmed or frustrated or nervous or something. And you do this process, and you're not going back to a memory here. You're staying right in the present, and you clear it out and then just move on with your day. And the Aroma boost is the same thing, except after you've done that, you kind of progress towards an action step. And I don't mean to be rushing through all this, and I'm sorry if I'm going fast, but there's so much to share. I just want to give you an overview just so that you can go and learn more if you need to. Then Aroma wisdom, I used to call this the doomsday technique. I created this during the pandemic because there were so many people, myself included, I would think about the future and I would just feel depressed. I would feel just like, what's happening to our world, what's happening to our country, what's happening to my friends. And using this process, we start with feeling worry or dread about the future and clear that out. And if we have time, I'll explain a little bit more about the science of how I figured that out, how that we can clear out. It's almost like a memory of the future, if you think of it that way. We have the memory of the past, we have a memory of the present, and a memory of the future. Okay, so the question on the table for today is, how can smelling an essential oil trigger a permanent change in how a person views themselves and the world? Because we've all had the experience of smelling an oil and feeling better in that moment. You feeling stressed out, you smell that stress away and you feel better. You put on that Valor and you feel strong and calm. You smell that Idaho balsam fir and you feel grounded. We've all had that experience. But that doesn't mean that tomorrow you might not get freaked out again, right? So what can we do? What I did is I combined psychology with aromatherapy so that we do the psychology part first. And you'll see when we do an AFT session, you're not really smelling oils in the beginning. We're working on setting everything up, getting you back to that place with that feeling and that thought and that emotion and the memory. And then once it's all pulled up, boom, you smell the right oil, and that's where the magic happens. So that's really what I'm bringing to the table here, is not just which oil to smell, but when to smell it. In fact, I don't know if any of you ever heard that story, joke or story, whatever you call it, of there was an inventor who invented this fancy machine that was being used in a factory. And one day it stopped working. And so the factory manager calls up the inventor, says, you got to come down here. The machine isn't working. And so the inventor comes down, he looks all around and looks for a minute, and then just takes out his hammer and taps it a couple times. Boom, the machine starts working again. He says, thank you. So the inventor hands him the bill. He looks at the bill, it's $10,000. He said, $10,000? That's ridiculous. Can you please give me an itemized bill? So the inventor scribbles something, hands it back to him. He says, tapping on the machine, $10. Knowing where to tap, $9,990. And that's really what this is all about, is we're lifting under the hood here, and we're identifying how the mind actually works. And once you understand how the mind and the emotions and memories actually work, then you know where to tap. Then you know how to introduce the oil at just the right time and just the right way to have everything just open up. So that's really what we're doing. So to explain all this, we need to get into some more neuroscience. As I mentioned, there's this concept called memory reconsolidation, and this is a breakthrough. And if you can Google it, it's getting more popular now. It's something over the last 20 years or so has been gaining some traction and starting to take off in the psychotherapy world a little bit. There are some writers who are doing a really good job of showing how memory reconsolidation is actually what's happening in a therapy session that works. This is why it works. So there are many therapies that do all kinds of fancy, amazing things, And when they work, it's because a memory has been reconsolidated. And that's really what they're finding now. Okay, they're lifting the hood and we're looking underneath and we're seeing. So just briefly, a little bit of understanding memory. Well, what is memory? Memory says, this one definition of Wikipedia says, memory is the faculty of mind by which information is encoded, stored, and retrieved. Memory is vital to experiences and related to limbic systems. It is the retention of information over time for the purpose of influencing future action. So what I want you to underline in your own mind here is this last part of the sentence. For the retention of information over time for the purpose of influencing future action. Did you guys know that? That memory isn't actually about the past. Memory is actually about the future. Memory is actually a prediction of what's going to happen. If you remember that the last time you tossed a ball in the air, it fell down, that's also a prediction that the next time you toss a ball in the air, it's going to fall down. Or if you have a memory of being yelled at every time you color outside the lines as a kid, well, that's also predicting in your mind subconsciously that when you color outside the lines, whether literally or figuratively later in your life, you're going to get yelled at. So every time you feel like you're breaking a rule or you're not doing what someone said and you feel anxious, it's because that memory from the past of being yelled at for how you colored is influencing how you feel now. So what I want you to really get out of this whole conversation today is how powerful our memories are and how much our memories are actually predictive of the future. So the memory is not what happened, it's the prediction of what we believe is going to happen. A quick example, something called fear conditioning is studied a lot in psychology. So let's say there was a dog that had a really nasty owner, a man with a beard, and the man would come home from work every day and take out his frustration and kick the dog. Well, what do you think would happen? The dog is conditioned to be afraid when the man comes home. But the thing is, there's something generalized that happens is, first of all, by learning that I'm going to be kicked, now all the dog has to do is see the man and starts to cringe, understandably, because he's learned he's going to be kicked. And then there's a generalization that can occur. And you maybe even have seen this. I know I've seen this in movies as well. The dog, oh, you've ever been on a walk and you want to pet the dog, like, oh, well, he doesn't like men, or he's afraid of men with beards. So this is what happens in our lives. We take features from our memories and we project them into the world because the dog, for all the dog knows, only men kick dogs and women don't. I mean, I don't know what the stats are. Maybe that's true. I don't know. But as far as the dog's concerned, that guy looks similar enough to my bad owner. I'm not going to get near him, right? So this is this learning and this generalization. So you can see, of course, how this applies in our own lives. You can think of, for instance, people that have been abused, been physically or sexually or emotionally abused as children, are going to develop certain beliefs about how the world works or who is safe and who isn't safe. And those are going to affect them into life until they can reconsolidate those memories and create new meaning, right? So this has to do with something called the memory complex, which actually was discovered by Freud over 100 years ago. It's been refined a little since then, but basically anytime we have a memory, let's say your house burned down, well, what's in that memory complex? There's the memory of the flames, the image of the flames engulfing the house, but there's more than that in there. There's also the feeling of terror that you remember, and that sensation in your body of your heart pounding, and then the smell of smoke, let's say, and also negative thoughts, I'm going to die. All of that's bound together in this memory complex. So when we activate the memory complex and we can dissolve that whole complex, all kinds of new things can happen. There's many types of memory, but the two we're going to focus on today is explicit and implicit memory. And this is a really interesting distinction that we don't think about much, but once you learn it, you're going to start thinking about it. Basically, explicit memory, this is the stuff that you know you remember. So you remember what you had for lunch last week, that's an explicit memory. So that's called an autobiographical memory, something that happened to you. You remember an event, you know, where were you during 9/11? You probably have a memory of where you were when you saw those towers burning or something like that. Also, you know, a concept 2 + 2 = 4, you remember learning it and so on. But the implicit memory is actually more interesting to us here. These are things like learning how to ride a bike. The explicit memory is remembering the time your uncle taught you to ride the bike. The implicit memory is your body memory of actually learning how to balance and stay pedaling and everything. Let's see, basic attitudes. Well, actually, I'm going to get into a couple slides later. There's going to be some examples. So the implicit memory is the stuff you learned during that explicit memory that you may not know that you learned, like biases and assumptions. This is where, you know, somebody maybe learns, and this is probably how people learn to be racist. Those who, you know, have beliefs about certain other people, they learned it without realizing they learned it. And then, you know, it may come back to, you know, to haunt them. Typing's an example. Implicit memory, so type your name on a keyboard without looking. Probably all of you can, because you have this body memory, you've done it before, you know how to do it. Okay, but you don't have an explicit memory, so don't look at your keys and tell me the middle row of the keyboard. You probably can't do it. So that's something, it's wholly implicit. It's not really explicit, right? So we have lots of implicit memory. So let's say, instead of a dog that was kicked every day, let's say it was a person that was kicked every day, okay? And the person that is now afraid of men doesn't have any memory of being kicked, but still has that fear of men. That's an example. They have an implicit memory with no explicit memory, so that can happen. Another example, childhood memory, let's say you were bullied at school and you have a memory of it. You remember you know, all the kids standing around and they were all laughing at you because your hair was the wrong length or your shirt was the, you know, wrong color or whatever. So you have that explicit memory, but the implicit memory is something like, people don't like me, I should just keep my head down and not connect with others. And so you develop this muscle memory, you could say, of how to engage or to not engage with others. Just like you know how to ride a bike, you know how to avoid people, right? You don't know that that's what you're doing. You don't know that that's why you're having trouble relating to people in life. And yet that's what's going on. Is this making sense to you guys? So how do memories form? Do they form instantly? No, they don't. They something called consolidate over time. So basically, when we learn something, this is why they say you should study and then sleep and then study again. As you're sleeping, your brain is reviewing and consolidating the memory. So basically, let's say, you know, whatever happens at school that day, then you go home at night, maybe you think about it, you talk to your friends about it, you tell your family about it. Each time you do that, you're creating and recreating that memory. And what you do is you are kind of selecting out of everything that happened that day, you're finding, well, what's the most salient? What's the most emotionally important? I mean, you don't remember everything that happened that day. Like, think about today. You don't remember everything that happened, but you tend to remember the things where there was some more emotion connected with them. You know, unfortunately, if something bad happens, you're going to remember that even more. The brain has a tendency to remember the bad stuff more than the good stuff. It's called a negativity bias, and it's built into our brains actually for survival. This is why, you know, the dog is going to remember being kicked more than the nap that he took or the kibble that he ate if it wasn't interesting, right? So the memory is organized over time, and we believe them to be true, whether they were true or not. That's what we believe. So this is how it works. We have stuff happens, take stuff in through our senses, goes into short-term memory, and then we rehearse it over and over, and it gets put to long-term memory. Okay, that's how memories are formed, but that's called memory consolidation. okay, not reconsolidation yet. So memory consolidation, this has been known for many, many years in psychology. It's not up for debate. This is, pretty much understood. This is what happens. Now, up until the research came out recently about reconsolidation, the belief that scientists had were that once a memory consolidates, that's it. It'll never change. You can learn other stuff on top of it, but you can't unlearn that original stuff and change it, right? You can't change a memory. You can only layer something new. And the way they would study this is, let's say there was, again, this example of the dog that's afraid of the man. Could the dog ever learn to not be afraid of the man? And what they would say is no. The dog could learn, maybe he gets a new owner, and the new owner over time, is very friendly and nice. So, over time, the dog calms down, the dog is no longer aggressive. Maybe the dog even learns to slowly socialize again with men, even men with beards, even men that looked like his old owner. Okay, so the dog could learn, okay, it's safe now, it's safe now, it's safe now. But even there was, whenever they would do studies in this, if you take away that learning opportunity over time, and then he sees his original owner again, he's going to go into fear again. So what that means is he never unlearned the fear, he just learned how to deal with it. And this is also how trauma has been dealt with for many, many years as well. People said, well, you just got to learn to live with it, or learn to calm your anxiety, or maybe slowly learn to, get on with your life. But people could still have situations where they get triggered and get thrown into a flashback or get put back. I don't know if any of you can relate to that, but this is a big problem for people that have been traumatized in life, is they want to move forward, but that original learning is so in place. So I was mentioning memory. So basically, the strength of the explicit memory you have determines how well you remember it. So things that are unimportant, there's really no emotion connected. Yeah, I had the same sandwich today. Yep, drove today, nothing happened. There's not much emotion there, you're not going to remember it. Okay, but something really interesting happened, or a song came on that you loved, or that reminded you of something, or you saw your sweetheart, or something positive or negative happens, you remember that, okay, up to a certain point. But if it's a totally traumatic situation, then it's too much. Then explicit memory is impaired and it's poorly remembered, okay? That's a whole other story when we get into trauma treatment. For those of you who are interested, I have classes on this sort of thing. People who don't have the memory of the abuse, let's say, it's because it was so terrifying that their memory system, they never consolidated the memory. They never explicitly consolidated the memory, but they still learned the lesson. So someone who was assaulted in childhood, so much so that they were terrified and dissociated and everything, they have no memory of it, right? But their body remembers. That's the famous book, The Body Keeps the Score. It talks all about that. They still have an implicit memory that life is dangerous, or I'm not safe, or nobody loves me, or I'm, a piece of trash, or whatever those implicit learnings were are still there, even if there's no explicit memory. Emotions are like a neon sign telling your brain, remember this. So can memories change? Can the explicit memory change? And can the implicit memory change? Why are the memories so hard to erase? I can't get into all the details why, but one quote from Bruce Ecker, he's kind of the leader in this field. He says, selection pressures during evolution apparently crafted the brain such that any learning that occurs in the presence of strong emotion becomes stored in specialized subcortical implicit memory circuits that are exceptionally durable. That's a mouthful. What that's saying is that when we have strong emotion, our brain stores that memory very deeply in these subcortical, so not our thoughts, it's our subconscious, it's our emotional brain, in these brain circuits that are hard to erase. That's why a person goes into therapy, talks about their trauma for 20 years and still doesn't feel any better. that's why, because they haven't actually unlocked it, which is what we need to do. So as we grow, we build up these implicit beliefs and procedural memories for navigating the world. Like you might walk around with these limiting thoughts. I need to avoid speaking up in public or I'll be embarrassed. Or I should go shopping as a way to relieve stress. That's just like something you learn to do, maybe because you saw your mom do it. And so that's what you do. And you don't know that's what you do, but you find yourself at the mall every time that you're being stressed, whatever it is. Or I shouldn't take risks, or I need to take risks. These are all belief systems that we have. Our question again, is it possible for an old, emotionally laden implicit memory and learning, such as the world isn't safe, I better avoid relationships, to ever be rewritten so completely that it ceases to create problems for the person? Okay, so can that abused person who has this deep fear of people or this deep damage to their self-confidence, can they ever really be free of that? And I'm going to tell you yes. Now, the previous research only supported consolidation, that, well, they can learn how to make it in the world. They can learn how to tell themselves they're good enough. They can, repair some of that, but they might always be triggered in the future. But the new research is that when these neurons that hold this memory in place unlock, when the memory is reactivated, if the memory gets reactivated and there's something about the activation that's different, the neurons stay open for 5 hours looking for new information to see, is there something new here? If they don't find anything new, they relock. So some everyday examples of reconsolidation. It's actually it's a brain process that we use every day. We're just now studying it so that we can use it intentionally. So for instance, reformulating a negative first impression of someone. So let's say you saw somebody, you meet someone for the first time and they're just not really very engaging, and they're kind of aloof and they're kind of not really friendly, and you're like, geez, what's wrong with that person? I don't like that person. They're cold, they're unfriendly. So you walk around with that, and then say later you're talking with your friend, and you've learned from that friend that, oh, well, they just got a phone call that their mother just died, and so they were kind of preoccupied. You're like, oh. And then what do? You go back and you have to rewrite and realize that I remembered her as being cold, but now when I look at, I can see that she was in grief and she was distracted, not because of a cold personality, right? So we do change our mind sometimes, and we need to be able to change our mind sometimes. Gaining a more mature perspective about a situation and so on. So this kind of thing, we have to be able to rewrite our memories. Otherwise, our life would be nothing but, inaccurate memories of things. So just to be technical, they found that there's 3 steps involved that are necessary to reconsolidate a memory. You have to activate the target memory. So let's take the example. Again, okay, let's imagine it's a child that was kicked instead of the dog, so that the child can now be in our office and we're working with them. You activate the memory of what it was like to be kicked every day when dad came home. Okay, then you have to become aware of some mismatch between the learned information and present reality. So the explicit memory of being kicked, that's not what really bothered. I mean, that could bother them, but the reason that they're seeking help is because they find they're always afraid of men, and that's the part they want to get over. So they need to somehow become aware of a mismatch between this learned information and the present reality. Now, in psychotherapy, there are forms of psychotherapy that understand this and can work with those memories and help a person to see how, okay, I find myself reacting this way every time I see a man, and I can learn to ask myself some questions, is this true? And can kind of over time learn to reconsolidate that. Excuse me. So in that case, their mind starts to open up and they're thinking, gosh, I'm realizing that I'm having all these reactions and maybe I'm not reacting accurately to life. And then this opens this possibility to experience something new. And actually, maybe I had a friendly encounter with a man and I didn't feel threatened because I was in this questioning mode. And I realized that I was just projecting my past onto them. And so if a therapy does that, then it's doing reconsolidation. And good therapists know how to do this kind of intuitively. But you have to pull up the feeling and you have to be present to what it is you learned in that memory. So this is memory reconsolidation in general. Then I'm going to show you how Aroma Freedom does this with the oils and how we can do that with the oils. So just briefly, these are some of the references from Bruce Ecker's book. By the way, it's called Unlocking the Emotional Brain, I think it's called. Yeah, Unlocking the Emotional Brain. And this is done with crabs, humans, rats, across many species, you know, many different types of species. They all have the same operating system, and they can learn how to activate a memory and then change the memory. I won't go into it too much here because I don't have a ton of time, but I am writing a new book, and all this stuff is going to be in the new book. So I'm really excited about that. You know, look for that to come out in the next couple months, probably. I was hoping I could get it out for convention, and it's not happening. There's so much I want to get in there that it can't happen by convention, but within a few months, and that'll explain more of this as well. Excuse me. Okay, here's an interesting one, and you can see the relevance here, and I'll tie this back with oils in a second. This is a study they did back in the 60s. One of the common treatments for severe depression was electroconvulsive shock. That's not done that much anymore, though it is still done on occasion. It sounds awful. It's, you know, they're putting electrodes and they're actually just putting high voltage in the brain to try to break people out of that depression. And what they found was that patients who were given ECT showed little or no reduction in their symptoms. So generally, it didn't work that well. But if the patients were instructed to think about their symptoms during the shock, showed complete symptom relief. So what does that mean? That means in activating the relevant memories. So they're thinking about their relationship with their parents or whatever it is that really has them so depressed, or they're thinking about the job they lost or the love that they lost, right? As they're thinking about it and then they get the shock, it goes away. And it actually kind of erases the memory. So we do something similar, but not as painful with the oils by having people pull up the memory in its full juiciness. We're pulling up not just the memory, but the feeling and the bodily sensations and the thoughts, pulling all of that up. And then they smell the oils. And we can have this very gentle, it's not jarring, it's a very gentle breaking apart of the memory complex. Sometimes the memory itself dissolves, sometimes the memory is still there, but the emotion around it dissolves and the thoughts change. Okay, so you could say that we are doing ECT with oils very gently, but it is the gentlest of all the trauma therapies out there. I believe this is actually the gentlest. Those of you who've been around this at all, EMDR, there are a lot of great trauma therapies out there, but some of them are kind of intense and they really kind of make you go through it, and it's very exhausting. This, we just bring you to the precipice, you could say. We bring you to the point where you are feeling it, but then within a minute or two, it just dissolves. So that's the oils. So when you reactivate the memory and experience a mismatch, the system is ripe for reconsolidation. The essential oils are what's providing the mismatch. So basically what's happening is that you're thinking of the memory. Okay, I'm remembering being kicked. I'm feeling fear. I feel it in my gut. My negative thought is I'm gonna die. Okay, you're pulling all that up. Now you start smelling an oil, and your brain is like, well, wait a minute. I'm feeling calm as I'm remembering that. Something doesn't work here. There's a mismatch here. It opens the neurons up, and they start saying, well, wait a minute. Well, maybe that memory, it doesn't have to influence my life anymore. Maybe it's not always true that every man's going to hurt me. Your brain starts opening up, and as you keep smelling the oils, you keep getting reinforced that, yeah, you know, I can actually feel pretty good in the present of that memory. You know what? that memory doesn't bother me at all. That's just something that I remember from the past. That doesn't affect my future. So that's how Aroma Freedom does it. By pulling up all of these relevant memories, and then because the sense of smell is so powerful, it's a primitive emotional sense that we have, and it won't be denied. You know, when you smell something that's disgusting, you cannot eat it, right? You literally choke. Why? Because your brain is saying, I'm smelling some metabolites of some bacteria there that would probably kill me if I ate it. So I'm not going to eat it. Or you smell, on the other side of it, you smell something wonderful. You smell your partner's perfume, or you, oils, of course, or you smell food that tastes delicious and it calms you and excites you. Or if you're in you're meditating and there's the incense or the frankincense or something, you're smelling that, it just calms you and you can't really resist it. So we're providing kind of an irresistible calming in the presence of a traumatic or upsetting memory. The brain feels this mismatch and the memory just dissolves, and not just the explicit memory, but the implicit memory, right? So this is what happens with Aroma Freedom. As I said, we activate the target memory and we become aware of this mismatch. By smelling the essential oils, it calms the amygdala, creates the mismatch. And then we notice some new wisdom coming in and we realize everything's okay. And we get this new wisdom. So this is how Aroma Freedom, when I created it more intuitively. The science backs up exactly why it works. So activating the, I'm not going to go into this prediction. There's a whole other class I could do on prediction. So what he says, true reconsolidation basically means that a specific emotional reaction abruptly can no longer be reactivated by cues and triggers that formerly did so, or by other stressful situations. So this means that normally, let's say when you smelled the thing that you were, that used to remind you of the war or remind you of someone who assaulted you, in the past, you would smell it and you would freak out. It no longer does that. Also, your symptoms, your behavior, your emotions, your bodily sensations, anything that was an expression of that reaction also disappear, like the woman who was always nibbling her fingers. And then after doing AFT, the symptom goes away. And then the non-reoccurrence of the emotional reaction and symptoms continues effortlessly and without counteractive or preventive measures of any kind. So this means that you're on easy street, that you've reconsolidated it, you don't have to think about it anymore, you don't have to worry about it anymore. So the child who totally reconsolidates can now be around men, be around women, be around anyone, and not have that fear reaction anymore. And they don't have to work at it. That's what we really want. And that's how, when we set up the reconsolidation properly using these techniques, we get there. I don't think I'm going to have time for a demonstration today. I was going to show you maybe a Aroma reset or an Aroma clear process. Since I can't do it today, I will direct you to the website. You can download some free information and learn about that. Let me just share a little bit about how you can learn more. So aromafreedom.com. You can get the original book. Now, the original book doesn't mention reconsolidation because I didn't know it at the time, but it does mention, it does show you the 12 steps, goes into depth about what they are, a little more about why it works and how it works and everything. Also, we have a certification program. You don't have to become certified to do Aroma Freedom, but if you want to charge for it, then you do have to be certified. So some people become certified. In fact, we have some of my certified folks are on the call today. Welcome. Once you are certified, you can charge for sessions, you can charge for group sessions, you can set up programs. Let's say you could set up a program to get over food cravings, you know, I don't know, a 6-week program, and use Aroma Freedom in that professionally. Or if you're already a therapist or, you know, some type of healing professional, then you could fold in AFT to what you're doing if you're certified. So a few things, a few specials. So practitioner certification, it's a big commitment. It's a big, it's life-changing, it's transformational. So there's going to be a ton of learning. You're going to do lots of sessions on yourself and others on all 6 techniques. I'm going to give you guys a special. You can use the code GROW10 at checkout. You can get 10% off of practitioner certification. We have the next one is starting, I believe, in July. So 10% off that. Also, I have another course, Resetting Your Money Blueprint, not as intensive, but that's kind of a deep journey into the messages you received about money from your family, from your parents, from your culture, from your own experiences, clearing some of those things out as well. Again, use GROW10 at checkout for any of those. Also, anyone can just access 30 days free access to the Aroma Freedom Training Vault. I have dozens of videos, all the different techniques. I go into them, and a lot of the videos, I'm taking you through a process. And some people say that they even prefer to go through the processes on a replay. It's actually better on a replay than it is live. And the reason why is that when we're live, I can just give you the best approximation of how long you're going to take for each step. So I'm going to lead you through the process and then have you, smell the oils. And then, based on when I believe most people are clear, we move on and we do a few rounds, but there's always going to be some that wish we had more time. So the replays are perfect for that because when you watch the replay, you can just, you press pause and you just breathe the oils as long as you want. When you're ready, you unpause it, you go through. So those are some different ways you can learn about it. I realized I kind of bit off a lot in saying I was going to do this topic in an hour. It's there's so much to it, but I hope I was able to give you guys some ideas of what's possible. This is really an exciting time for us all because we now have a tool that we can use, and we can use the oils to help people make permanent changes in their lives. And so part of the inspiration for creating Aroma Freedom was actually, I'll tell this story real quick before we stop, I had been a psychologist for, almost 20 years at that time. So it was 2015. And I had also, my wife and I had built up our Young Living business. We were platinum. So I kind of felt like I had these 2 lives. And I was a psychologist by day and an oiler by night and weekend, but I couldn't figure out how to get the oils into the consulting room. Like I didn't understand. I didn't have a rational way of doing it. I had the ways that Gary taught. Gary was a genius with it, but it wouldn't work for me to just lay someone down on a massage table and have them smell oils for 2 hours in my psychology practice, right? So, so I actually requested to have one of my diamond uplines is Connie McDaniel. She's a wonderful woman, and she had been aware of my work over the years, and we had known each other, and she had been a wonderful support. And I asked if I could have a meeting with her. This was at the Dallas convention. We're interviewing at the Dallas convention. This was 2015. The reason I remember that is because it was the year before my book came out. And we were at the Gaylord Hotel, and it was really a fun time. Young Living was not huge yet. It was just starting to really accelerate. And I asked to speak with her, and I told her, I said, I feel like I'm riding 2 horses here. I feel like, because, you study network marketing, and network marketers, sometimes they'll say, oh, quit your day job, fire your boss, and just do network marketing. It's so much. And I'm like, well, I love the oils, but I also love being a psychologist. I'm not going to quit that. I feel like that's part of what I'm here to do. Right. But, I didn't want to go the other way either. Say, oh, well, just let go of the oils and just focus on your psychology. So I told her about my dilemma and how I felt like I was kind of stuck. And she paused for a minute and she said, create a tool. She said, if you create a tool, you can duplicate what you do. And that was a real big light bulb moment for me because, you know, we had been following, you know, the network marketing gurus who talked about duplication, right? And that you cannot build a Young Living or any network marketing business unless what you do is duplicatable, right? If you don't have a system, because there's only one of you, you can't just enroll everybody and be a diamond. It doesn't work that way, right? So, you know, different systems have emerged. Interesting that that's also Sarah Harnish, who was also from upstate New York, lived 2 hours away from me. She came out with her first book that same year and her beautiful system. And there have been so many systems that have come through and they're wonderful. And they give us guidance of what to do. So that's what was guiding me when I wanted to create a system, because I knew how to help people with all kinds of stuff in my office when they were there with me. But then when they go home, they can't help themselves. They certainly can't help anybody else. But if I created a system, I could show them how to do it. So that's where this whole thing was born, of this 12-step process, step 1, step 2, step 3, then if so, then you circle back to step 3, do it till you're all the way through. So that's really why this has become popular, is not so much because I can do it, but because you can do it, because anybody can do it who follows the system. So that's really what the training is about, is just to go deeper so you can learn it from the book. At least the first technique you can. The second book is going to come with more information, but from all the different materials we have, you can learn how to do these processes. And I love to see my graduates really shine, and they go out there and then they're helping people, and then they're helping more people from that. So it's a system you can use, and I hope you do.